The first thing, and I want you to try these two by yourself because this is, actually no, let's do the first one together. Excuse me. So if we have a look at our very first question here, I have asked you to simplify the following. Now, grade 8s, remember, when you are told to simplify something, you are being asked to make that expression easier to look at, essentially. So what that means is you need to be looking to see if there's anything that you need to multiply out. So if there's brackets, do you need to do distribution? If there's a fraction, do you need to divide? If there's exponents, do you need to deal with that? And following that idea of bodmas, right at the end, we need to see, are there any like terms that we want to add or subtract? Okay, so just to remind you, bodmas, or you can say bedmas or pedmas, it really doesn't matter. Bodmas is very important to us because it tells us the order in which we need to do our work. Now, grade 8s, I can't tell you this enough. When we are simplifying expressions, even like at a matric level, matrics will forget about bodmas. It is so important that you do your order of work correctly. If you don't, you are going to get the wrong answer. So please make sure to remember to always double check, are you following bodmas? Are you doing all of the operations that you need to do? And if you are doing that, you should be okay in terms of getting the correct answer. Now, if we have a look at our first expression here, we can see that we have no brackets. So the B of bodmas I don't have to stress about. There's no exponents that I need to deal with. There's no division, there's no multiplication, there's only addition and subtraction. Again, what you also need to remember is that multiplication and division and addition and subtraction fall on the same sort of level of importance as each other. And so what that means is when you have just addition or subtraction, or when you've got just division and multiplication, you do it from left to right. You don't do division first and then multiplication. You don't do addition first and then subtraction. You just work left to right with your expression and you will get your answer. Whoops. So in this case, I've only got addition and subtraction. So what that means is I need to now start to identify my like terms. So remember, when we're adding or subtracting terms, we need to identify like terms for ourselves so that we know exactly which terms to add and subtract. You can't just add everything because not all of these terms are like terms. You have to add like terms. So remember, guys, like terms are terms that have the same variables and exponents to them. When we start to deal more with exponents, we'll obviously chat about that a bit more. But excuse me, like terms are ones that have the same variable, so the same letter and the same exponent. So if we have a look at our expression, and I like to identify my like terms by highlighting them, we can see that we've got a term with S in it, and we've got a second term with S in it, and so those would be like terms. So the positive 2S and the negative 2S, those are like terms to each other. What that means is I can add or subtract them. Right, those are the only terms with S in them. So now I go and I pick another color, or you start to underline, and we've got terms with a D in them. So we've got positive 4D, positive 3D. Those are then also like terms to each other. And then we've got our constant terms. Remember, constant term is a term that just has a number in it. And we've got two constant terms, negative 3 and 7. Now, for some people, they're quite, English. Some students like to rewrite this grouping their like terms, which is fine. I personally don't do that, but there's nothing wrong with that. So when I say grouping like terms, I'm saying they write the S terms together. So 2S minus 2S, the D terms together. So positive 4D plus 3D, and then the constant terms together, minus 3 plus 7. Okay, so now that we know exactly which terms we can add or subtract, we go and do exactly that. So 2S minus 2S. If you've got 2 apples and you take 2 apples away, you have no more apples left. So those actually just cancel each other out. They're gone. All right. Please stop putting answers on the chat. I'm trying to explain this. Wait until I've done the answer, and then we can start chatting about where we've gone wrong. Then I go and add my d term. So I've got positive 4d plus 3d. What that means is I've got like terms, and what that means is because I'm adding 2, I need to be moving up my number line. So positive 4d plus 3d is 7d. And then I've got my constants. I've got negative 3 plus 7. Now again, think about your number line. Negative 3 is on the negative end. If you're going to add 7, what that means is that you need to move up your number line towards positive infinity. When you now add 7, you're ending up with a positive 4. We always double check to see if we've got like terms in our last step, because I can't add or subtract those because they are not like terms. That is my final answer. So in simplifying this expression, I have been able to get 7d plus 4. So there should be no s's in your answer, which is why I asked you to not put answers on the chat, because now some of you have hopefully been correcting as I've gone along, but not everyone is following, and that is a problem. Right, so guys.
Sorry, Teacher. I was about to say, well, now it's time for them to actually ask questions. So let's go, because we're seeing some answers there that were not correct. So hopefully we'll get some questions, or maybe you figure it out already, because we're not listening.
Right, so guys, if you've got questions, now's the time you can raise your hand. But please remember, if it's because you weren't listening, that is a you problem, and you need to go and watch the videos. But questions, if you're not understanding where something's come from, please do ask. Vitale?
Ma'am, I want to ask, ma'am, why don't we write the 2 S's, ma'am? Is it because they were cancelled out because they are like terms, or ma'am, is it like because it's to the ma'am? Yeah, ma'am, sorry.
Okay, so firstly, guys, on the chat, some of you have also asked, why can't we say that the 2s minus 2s is equal to s? We weren't listening. So remember, if I had given you on a completely separate example, so if we just think about very basic number sense, if I had said 5 minus 5, that's 0. If I had said 11 minus 11, that's 0. When you subtract something from itself, it is 0. And so because I've got 2s minus 2s, I've got no s's left, so it becomes 0. Okay, so if your terms cancel each other out, if when you subtract them, you end up with nothing, that is fine. That's not a problem. You're just taking away everything that you have. And so you've got 0. So there should be no s's in our answer here. So click on no, because it is negative 3 plus 7. Just be careful. There is a negative in front of the 3. BK?
Ma'am?
Yes.
So I want to get this thing right, ma'am, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I want to get this thing perfectly in my mind, ma'am. So let me see. The negative, like for example, ma'am, the negative, if like the 4d was negative, ma'am, and it was minus or plus by negative 3d. How are we gonna do that sum?
So you're saying minus 4d minus 3d.
Yes, that's
okay. So we just would subtract them. So if you've got already on minus 4d and now you're taking away 3d's, that would then end up being negative 7d. So it's about adding the coefficients or the numbers in front of the variables.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay.
Interesting. people must not rewrite, ma'am. You.
Remember, you can check using a calculator, guys. You can check -4 minus 3. What does it give you on your calculator? Always, you can double check yourself.
All right, Oami. There should be a pop-up to unmute yourself. There we go.
For the 3 and 7, what if you simplified the signs?
What do you mean simplified the signs?
Like saying the negative and the positive gives you the negative.
you're not multiplying them, so you cannot say a positive and a negative is a negative. It's only when we multiply or divide do we use that rule. But here it's a number line. You add -3. So here I am, I'm adding 7, so I move up my number line until I get to +4.
Yes.
Okay, so guys, that's very important. It's only when you multiply or divide can you use the idea that a positive and a negative make a negative, or whatever the case is. Tatenda?
Hello, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Ma'am, is it a must for us to find the like terms?
Yes. Because then, like, that is the only way we know that is the only way we know which ones we can add. You can't just go say 2s plus 4s minus 3 plus 3. Like, those are not like terms. So you have to know which terms you can add and subtract before you do that.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. Molemo?
Ma'am, can you hear me?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, ma'am, please explain how did we get 7D plus 4?
That's from my like terms. If I go to my like terms here, I've got the positive 4D plus 3D. So 4 plus 3 is 7, so 7D. And then minus 3 plus 7, if I go to my constants, minus 3 plus 7 gives me 4. So that's where I'm getting my answer from adding and subtracting my like terms.
Thank you,
Sure.
ma'am.
Ortile? Ortile, I can't hear you. You're going to have to either remove the headphone or change the input. Still can't hear you.
You can definitely just type it out. We can't hear you. I think it's because either your volume is low or something, but put it in the chat and let's try to fix that, okay?
Okay, also grade 8s, please also remember that you can put your questions on the chat. I can't unfortunately spend the whole lesson answering questions, so please put your questions on the chat. I am going to take one more hand and then we're moving on. I hope I say your name correctly. Amo Felachang? No, that's not right. Please correct me.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Afternoon.
And then my name is Amo Helang, ma'am, or you can just call me Amo, ma'am, for short.
No, Amo Helang. I've got it now. I needed to hear it. Thank you. What's your question?
Ma'am, is it possible, ma'am, that if ma'am, if 2s minus 2s, ma'am, they cancel each other, right, ma'am? Is it possible that all the numbers can cancel each other, ma'am? And
It is possible.
if they cancel each other, ma'am, what will be the answer? Will the answer be
So, like you say, it is definitely possible
will the
that
answer be the variables or
0. If everything cancels out, you're left with nothing. So your answer would be 0.
okay, ma'am? So I wouldn't have to write the variables, ma'am. I just write 0.
Exactly. So like you see here, because the 2s and the negative 2s cancelled out, I didn't write an s down. There's no s. They've cancelled. So if everything cancels each other out, you're left with nothing. So you would just write 0. Okay, so grade 8s. You are not listening because there are people asking questions on the chat right now. As I'm explaining your question, you are retyping questions. So I'm having difficulty understanding why we aren't listening, both to the questions that people are asking and my answers, because now we've got a flurry of questions on the chat that I have just answered. So I'm going to go through these questions on the chat. If I do not answer your question, it means I have already done it and you need to go and watch the videos. So anyone asking where the pluses come from, I've answered that. Please go watch the video. The final answer cannot be 11D because those are not like terms. They are not like terms, so we cannot add or subtract them, which means that no, we cannot simplify the answer further. This is as simple as it gets. We have no S's. I've explained that multiple times now, so you need to go and watch the video. So any questions I haven't answered, you need to go look at the video. I'm moving on to the next question. I hope you've all taken screenshots whilst I was answering questions. Right, so here again, there should be no more hands. I'm done with questions. Please put your questions on the chat. Unfortunately, we can't spend the whole lesson answering questions, but do put it on the chat and we can help you there. If you don't want to put it on the chat for everyone, you're welcome to direct message Yolanda or myself. Right, so once again, guys, what we want to do is we want to double check our bodmas. So we just want to make sure there's no multiplication or division I need to deal with here. There isn't. I can see that I only have plus and minus. And second, I see that I want to look for my like terms. And yes, again, you have to identify your like terms. You cannot just add everything. They are not like terms, so you can't just do what you want. So if I look at my first term, this is a term that contains only an x. So I now want to find all of the terms in this expression that only have one single x in it. So here's a negative 1x. Please remember that there is an imaginary or an invisible 1 in front of that x. We also have a positive 2x, but that's it. Those are the only terms that have x only in there. So that is one group of like terms that I can add or subtract. If I now move on to my next term is a term with x and y in it. So now I want to find all terms with x and y. Now, very importantly, grade 8, when you have multiple variables, it doesn't matter what order they are in. If it's xy or yx, as you can see here, they are like terms. And the reason is because we are multiplying 2 times x times y, and order of multiplication doesn't matter. If you say 3 times 2, you get 6. If you say 2 times 3, you still get 6. So the order in which the letters isn't important. What is important is that it contains the same letters with the same exponents. And we'll get to exponents in a second. Right, then I move on to my next term. I can see that my next term contains only y. So I've got a negative 3y. I see that I've got a second one that contains only y, which is positive 5y. And then I see, as like a random little aside, I have got a constant term of negative 7. There's no other constant term, so I can't do anything with that. It's going to essentially just stay negative 7. So what we want to now do is we want to group our terms together. So if I group all of my x terms, I've got 3x minus 1x plus 2x. So as a reminder, all of those terms are the terms that had x in them. So those are the green terms that we highlighted. Then we've got the xy terms rather, so plus 6xy plus 2xy. You can write it yx as it originally was, but I've just said the order doesn't matter. So those are the blue terms that are highlighted. Then I've got my y terms of minus 3y plus 5y. Those are the purple ones that we initially highlighted. I've grouped them together so I can see exactly what I'm adding and subtracting. And then remember I said right at the end, we've got this minus 7. It doesn't have any like terms to it. I'm not going to be able to add or subtract anything to it because it's not got any other values in its group. So it's going to stay as it is. So now that we know what we are adding because of our like terms, I can now actually go and add my like terms. So if we look at the green group of terms, the x terms, 3x minus 1x. So we're just going to do it step by step. 3x minus 1x is 2x. 2x plus 2x is 4x. So again, what has happened is that those green terms have all simplified down to one term because we could add and subtract them. We could simplify them. We've then got the blue terms, so positive 6xy plus 2xy. So if I've got 6 of them and I'm adding 2 more, I now have 8xy. So again, those blue terms have simplified to an expression, or to a single term rather, of positive 8xy. Then I've got the y term, so I've got negative 3y. I'm adding 5. So again, think of your number line. If you are sitting at negative 3 and you are adding 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you now have positive 2y. Again, I'm simplifying those terms to one term. That's a point of simplification. And then the negative 7 has no like terms to it. So it's just going to stay negative 7. Now, guys, at this point, very, very, very importantly, you have no more like terms, which therefore means that you cannot simplify further. And because you cannot simplify further, this is actually your final answer. I'm just going to rewrite it without all the colors. 4x plus 8xy plus 2y minus 7. That is it. You can't do anything more than that. They are not like terms. You can't add and subtract them. And so that is our final answer. So first things first, double check your bodmas. Is there any multiplication, division, exponents you need to deal with? If it is just addition and subtraction, then you need to identify your like terms so that you can correctly add and subtract. So again, take your screenshots. If you have questions, now is the time to raise your hand for me.
Yep, or you can ask on the chat also. Please make sure you take a screenshot. This is nice explained with colors, guys. So, and I hope that you are listening to those ones that Teacher Sam is going to answer their questions now so that you don't get confused, okay? Let's go.
Okay, Gabrielle?
Hi, ma'am, can you hear me?
I can.
Ma'am, I just wanted to ask, where you said 3x minus 1x, do you always have to put the 1 in front of the x if it doesn't have a number?
No. You need to know it's there. But no.
Oh, okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Sure. Okay, so guys, just on that, the 1 in front of the x, you need to know that any variable sitting by itself has the 1 in front, but you do not need to write it there. If it helps you to write it there, do it, but you don't have to. Single?
Hello, ma'am.
Evening?
Ma'am, the way I was taught in school, right? For 6xy plus 2xy, that the variables have to be the same.
They are the same. Just because the order is different, that doesn't matter. XY and YX are still the same thing.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you,
Okay,
ma'am.
so the order in which they are in doesn't matter. As long as they have the same variables, that's fine.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, Ortile, let's try again. Still can't hear you. Try.
Oratile, I know you're sorry. I know that your system works because we've spoken to you on Monday. It's just maybe you're using another device and the setting is not correctly. Because you can able to hear us. Yeah. Or you can put your question on the chat also for today, and then you need to sort it out. Definitely don't use headsets. Bad idea.
Or yeah, make sure your audio selection is correct. Okay, we'll try again in a second. Zanora, no XY because it should be alphabetical. So we always write it in alphabetical order. Itumaleng?
Hi, ma'am.
Hi.
Ma'am, can I ask if they said we have to simplify, like answer the whole thing?
That's what we've done here.
No, ma'am, like answer it further.
We can't. That's as much as we can do.
We cannot.
No, there's no more like terms. Like I've written in red, no more like terms, so we can't simplify further.
Okay, ma'am.
Sake? Asake?
Ma'am,
Yeah.
ma'am, I would like to ask if the number is negative, it means plus.
Can you give me an example?
Example is negative 3y plus 5y.
Yeah.
Does it decrease or increase?
Well, if you're at -3 and you're adding 5, even though I'm just redrawing the same number line. Okay. So now I've got -3y's. I'm adding 5, so the number is going to increase and get greater, more positive. So that's where I get 2y from.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Okay. BK?
Okay, ma'am. Yo, this. I understand this, ma'am. The thing is, ma'am, I want to ask if there's any way that we can write this like is there a formula?
No, there's not like a set of rules or something that we can follow. Like I said, like the thing that you need to do is double check that you're following bodmas and identifying your like terms. If you can do that, you should be able to simplify.
And one question, ma'am. I heard a voice that was so familiar. Is his name Tingu, ma'am? Is someone's name?
There might be, I don't know, but yeah.
The last person, ma'am. His voice sounds familiar, ma'am. He was in my school, ma'am. Yo.
Boka, you better have found that answer correct. Let's go. The next time, Boka, you are doing the answer, the C. You better be prepared. Boka, I'm watching you. Yolanda is watching.
Yeah.
Ma'am, can you hear?
Yes.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask, how did you get the 2y? Because I am confused. I'm trying to figure out, but I don't know.
Okay, so I've just explained it. So let's try listen. If we've got -3y plus 5y, if you look on your number line, here we are at -3. I'm adding 5, so I'm moving up my number line. 5 jumps, that takes me to +2. So that's where I get the +2y from.
Oh, thank you.
Right, Oratile, let's try this one more time. Otherwise, on the chat, please. Nope.
Put it on the chat, girl. You have no any other option.
Okay, last one, Uwami.
So whenever dealing with many like terms and there's one constant, we should keep it the same.
Say that again. Whenever we are dealing with like terms, ask your question again for me, please. You broke up a little bit.
So whenever dealing with like many like terms, and there's one constant, we keep the constant the same.
So if there's only one constant, like there is here, yes. But like we had in the first question, we had 2 constants, the ones in yellow. So then I have to actually add or subtract them. Okay. So guys, that's a good point. Anytime something is all by itself, we've only highlighted one thing, it's going to stay the same. Right, you should have taken your screenshots. Let's have a look at question C. So if we now have a look at C, hopefully what we're noticing is that now we've got exponents. So just to refresh your memory, because this is now going to be important moving forward, like terms have the same variable or variables. So as we saw, it could be X and Y. And very importantly, the same exponents. What that means is X squared is not a like term to, for example, X. The reason that is not a like term, this has an exponent of 2, this has an exponent of 1. They do not have the same exponents, so they are not like terms. Very important. So what that means is when we get an expression like what we have in C, we need to be very careful when we identify our like terms. So the first term I see here has an A squared. So I'm looking for any term that has an A squared, and it has to be A squared. That would then be this plus A squared. And remember, as I have already said, there is an invisible 1 in front of the A squared. You do not have to write it there, but it is there. Then as a completely separate group of terms, because it doesn't have an exponent of 2, we have got 6A and we have got 2A. So very, very important, because the exponents are different, they are not like terms. So A is a like term to A, and in a separate group, A squared is a like term to A squared. Now we can go and group them together so that we know what we are adding and subtracting. So I have got minus 4A squared plus 1A squared. No, you cannot add unlike terms. This is why we are grouping like terms, so that I know what I can add. Minus 6A minus 2A. So if we just do our colors here, here are my A terms, and then I've got my A squared terms. Two separate groups. I cannot add unlike terms. I have to find the like terms. If I now add and subtract my like terms, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to draw a number line, because some of us were feeling a little bit confused about how to add and subtract integers. On that note, grade 8, there are videos of adding and subtracting integers on Watobe's website. Go and watch them, please. Right, so we have got negative 4A. So here I am with my negative 4A squared. I'm adding 1. So I'm moving up my number line 1 place now to negative 3A squared. So I've added those two together to simplify it to one term. I have got, if I just make my number line a bit longer here, I then have the minus 6A, and I want to subtract 2A. It's getting a bit squished, but anyways. Here I am at minus 6. I'm taking away another 2 A's, leaving me at negative 8A. And so I have simplified my A terms in this expression. These are not like terms. Again, they are not like terms because they do not have the same exponent. And so this answer of minus 3A squared minus 8A is my final answer. I cannot do anything else with this answer. That is it. Just because they both have an A in it does not mean they are like terms. And we cannot go and add or subtract unlike terms. Right, take your screenshots, raise your hands if you have a question, please. Wait for me to say so, but anyways. Tine, I don't know if that's how you say your name. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
Hi, Miss. It's
Hi.
in committee.
Okay. What is your question?
It's Tine, Miss. Miss, I want to ask, why did you add the negative 6A and the negative 2A instead of subtracting?
I have essentially subtracted. I've added a negative 2A, so I have subtracted.
Miss, I don't understand.
Nevi, you can also use a calculator to recheck it for yourself.
Okay, but if I go to my number, okay, let's just do another number line here. if I'm sitting at negative 6a's, I want to take 2 away from that. So I am subtracting. I'm getting more negative because of that subtraction.
All right, miss.
Okay. Gabrielle?
Hi, ma'am.
Hi.
Ma'am, I wanted to ask why we didn't put a 1 as an exponent for the 6a and the 2a so we can add them.
Okay, you could put a 1, but we would not add them because we are not multiplying. We only add exponents if we are multiplying.
Oh, okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Sure. Sake? Sake, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, what is your question?
Ma'am, I wanted to ask, ma'am, why did you increase 6a minus 2a? Because 4a plus 1a, isn't it the same as 6a minus 2a?
But they're different numbers. How can they be the same? So negative 4a plus 1a gives me negative 3a because I've gone up my number line. If I'm at negative 6 and I'm taking away another 2, I need to go down my number line. So they have to give me different answers.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, can I please understand 6a, negative 6a minus 2a?
I have just explained it though. So why weren't we listening? Or do I need to do it again? Okay. Right, guys, I'm explaining this one more time. If you ask me again, then unfortunately I'm moving on. So the minus 6a minus 2a. Look at your number line in blue here. Let's try that again. Right, here I am with my negative 6a's. I want to take away 2a's. I need to go to the left. I need to decrease. I need to decrease by 1, 2. So that takes me to negative 8a. You've got a negative and you're taking away even more than that. And so I have to get an even more negative number. Right, guys, if you don't understand this, you need to go and watch the integer videos. This is not an integer course, so you need to go and watch those videos to catch it up. Zanera? You there? Okay, Zanera, there's just...
Zanera, you can put it on the chat. Sorry.
Yeah, there's just fuzz. I don't know what's happening. So
yeah.
Yes, guys, unfortunately, you don't get a brain break because in 50 minutes, we've done 3 questions. That's not good enough, unfortunately. Oratile, let's try one more time. So, Oratile, what I want you to try and do is by the microphone, you're going to have to select the correct option. So an external microphone or whatever the case is, and you're going to have to see if it works that way. Zanera, I'm not too sure why the 6a would be in brackets, to be honest. You could put the whole thing in brackets, I suppose, if you wanted to. So if you wanted to put brackets around that, you could, but then you are implying that it's multiplication. So there shouldn't be any brackets in this case. If you give me an example of what you mean, maybe put on... Okay, so because it's negative, you could, but then what you need to realize is that the question would now become minus 4a squared plus negative 6a, etc., etc. So we could do that, but in this case, I've just chosen to automatically simplify my signs. Right, guys, if we go and have a look at question D, again, what we want to do is we want to identify our like terms. Oratilia, remember, put it in on the chat for us. We'll help you there. So like terms, we're going to have a look. First things first is I'm going to collect all of the terms that have an x squared in them. So my first term of this group is going to be this, obviously, minus 3x squared. I then also have a plus 2x squared. I've got no more x squared terms, so I'm done with that group of terms. I then move on to my y squared terms. So there's a negative y squared. Remember, it does have that invisible 1 in front of it. We just don't have to write it. I also then have a minus 7y squared. Then going back to, and I think it was a Wami's question, we can now see that I've got one constant term. It's all by itself. And so what that means is that it's going to stay positive 9. It's not going to do anything. Okay, it's got nothing that we can add or subtract to it. So that's it. If I just group my like terms together, they are my x squared terms. Here is my y squared terms. And there is my constant. So again, if we just color coordinate here, there's my constant term, my y squared terms. Then I'm going to then eventually go and subtract from each other. And finally, my x squared terms. Right, so now I go and add and subtract my like terms. We're going to use a number line here. While I'm drawing a number line, Alexa, we cannot simplify that 3a squared because there's nothing I can add or subtract to it. Because there's no more like terms, I can't do anything with it. There's no way for me to simplify it. That is as simple as it gets. So there's nothing I can do there. Cool, cool, cool. Right, so if we're going to use our number line to add and subtract, and grade 8s, if you are not allowed a calculator, you draw a number line. This is how you need to be adding and subtracting integers. This is how I show you to do that in the videos that I've told you to go and watch if you are feeling confused. So if we start with the x squareds, I'm sitting at negative 3x squared, and I need to add 2. So I need to go up my number line 1, 2 units. That takes me to a negative 1. So what that means is I've got minus 1x squared as my simplified term. If I then go to my y squared terms, here I am at negative 1y squared, and I want to subtract 7. So now I need to move down my number line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I land up at negative 8. So this simplifies to minus 8y squared. And as I said, that plus 9 has no like terms to it. It's going to stay plus 9 because there is nothing that I can add or subtract to that plus 9 in order to simplify it. And so that's it. What that therefore means is that my final answer is minus x squared. If you want to write minus 1x squared, that's fine. Minus 8y squared plus 9. No, I cannot simplify this further. There are no like terms. This is it. This is where I stop. I can't do anything more than that. So if you have got no more like terms, you are done. Right, take your screenshots, please. What I am going to do is, in case some of you weren't on top of things, there is question C for you to take a screenshot of as well. Please do take screenshots. I'm hoping we've got no questions, but we've got 1 minute. If anyone has a question, you can raise your hand. Otherwise, you're taking screenshots, and then you're going to see the, Yolanda's put the quiz link on the chat. You need to follow that to do the quiz. Andile?
Ma'am,
Yeah.
you see how I did it, ma'am? I underlined the unlike terms, but I got the answer like the one that you gave me.
Okay, when you say you underline the unlike terms, what does that mean? What did you underline?
The like
okay,
terms.
that's fine. You're underlining instead of highlighting. Is that what you mean?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, that's fine. You can underline. For some people, highlights work, but underlining is fine as long as you're grouping the like terms. Nelson?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
What I'm confused with is that don't you add the powers?
No, because we are not multiplying.
No.
We only
Okay.
add powers when we multiply.
All right.